Welcome to the finale of the Castlevania 3 Dracula's Curse playthrough. In this video, we are going to take on Dracula and save wherever we are from evil once again. Yeah, I really don't know the plot of this game very well. I mean, I really don't care about the plot of some of these Castlevania games. I mean, most of the time, I just assume it's Dracula's doing something bad. You need to go kill him and then go do it. I mean, the plot, it's really non-existent until some of the later games, like the 3D ones and the DS games try to incorporate some plot into it, but even with those ones, I still really don't care about the plot. I mean, this game also, or not the game, the whole series has like an official timeline, and the plot is pretty much the same for all of them. Dracula gets resurrected, you need to go to his castle and kill him. I mean, sometimes it's different, and sometimes you have a different villain to face, but most of the time, it's always Dracula. Although at some point in the series, Dracula does die, like, permanently. They haven't made that game yet. I really want it. I really want the game where you actually kill Dracula, like, for good. He does not come back, because that would be a really cool game. But I doubt they will ever make it. Just because they want an excuse to keep making more sequels and prequels and all that. But I don't understand why they don't do that. I mean, they could make that game, but still make more games in the series. I mean, it doesn't matter to me, you know. It's just something I'm wishing for, but all of these games that I hope come out never do. Like, I've been hoping that Mega Man X9 comes out for the past 5 years now. I mean, I've gotten to the point where I've come to terms with the fact that Mega Man X9 is never gonna come out. It pains me to say that because I really want Mega Man X9, but I know deep inside that it's never gonna happen. And look at that! Look at that! Come on! Are you serious, game? A bat just came out as I was jumping to the final platform? Come on! Come on! Sometimes with these early Castlevania games, you get those moments which it just feels like a cheap death. It feels like you didn't do something wrong, but the game decided that it was time for you to die anyway. And I don't know, it doesn't really bother me too much because it doesn't happen that often, but those moments really should not happen. That should never happen to you. What? The bats, they should stop spawning when you get close enough to the door, just so that doesn't happen. I mean, do we really need to have bats here anyway? I mean, these jumps are difficult enough to make. Do we really need bats to make it that much harder? This game was intended to be very difficult, I can tell. But this is the final room of the game. Not the final room, but the final part before we get to the famous Dracula staircase. And here it is, the final encounter. Here we are going to face off with Dracula. And this is one of the hardest incarnations of Dracula in the series. There are 3 forms of him, and each one of them can be very difficult if you don't know what you're doing. For this fight, I actually recommend you take the axe. I think the axe is the best sub-weapon for all 3 of the forms. Or not so much the first form, but definitely for the second and third forms. And believe it or not, I actually beat him without taking a hit. This is the first and probably only time I will ever do this. I was shocked that I was able to beat him without taking a hit. I could not believe it. I was shocked. I'm like, oh, whoa, I just did that. I just beat him without taking a hit. This is like a miracle almost. It just, I was so shocked, and I'm still shocked that I did it. But the first part of Dracula, he'll teleport around the room, then he will make 2 columns of fire, and then a third one will come out. Now, the worst thing you could do in this fight is stand still. If you stand still when he makes the 2 columns come up, the 2 columns will come in between you. You won't have any space to move, and then the third one will come up and hit you every single time. So make sure you are constantly on the move so you can avoid those pillars. And you should be okay. It's not the hardest thing ever. Anyways, the second form of Dracula, he transforms into this weird, like, chandelier-looking thing that's just a bunch of faces. It likes to drop, like, this goo on you, and it hurts a lot, so just try to avoid it. If you have the axe, you can attack it from a distance, but every so often, make sure you use your whip, you know, when you're in close proximity to it. And that part isn't too bad either. Now the third part, now here is where things get difficult. If you don't have the axe, you are going to have so many problems with this fight. Now you can only hit Dracula in the head, and he will constantly shoot laser beams from his hands. And if you don't have the axe, you're supposed to use those platforms to hit Dracula. But the problem is, you have to jump off the platforms to hit him, and then sometimes when you jump off the platforms, you will jump in the hole in the floor, because whenever the platforms come up, there will be two holes in the floor, and then you can easily fall into them. And if you get hit from the lasers, you can also fall into the pit. It's a very difficult fight. If you have the axe, it pretty much makes it half as easy. It's just, the axe makes the fight so much easier. So much easier. If you have any other sub-weapon, good luck, because it is a difficult fight. And here comes my favorite tune in the NES library, or almost. Man, I love that tune. The tune is so awesome. Just that end game tune, it's so great. It's, even though it's like a 10-second music piece, it's still one of my favorite songs in the NES library. I mean, I guess you really can't consider it a song, but, you know, it's just really cool. I absolutely love it. And depending on what character you beat the game with, you get a different ending. Now, the endings really aren't that different. It's just the text is different, and the character that is standing on the cliff with you is different. Like here, I have Alucard, but I'll show off the other two endings in a second with Sypha and Grant. And, yeah, it's an ending. I mean, you can read it if you want. I'm not going to read it to you. I really don't know what it says. I don't think I've ever actually read it. I'm sure it basically says something along the lines of, Trevor has successfully defeated evil and brought good back to the land. You know, just like the intro. Because remember, in the intro, it was all like, oh, Dracula is doing bad things, turning the good people to bad people. And it's just like, it sounded like a 6-year-old wrote it. It was just, it was terrible. And I'm sure the ending is the same exact way, but I've never actually read it. To be honest, yeah, I've never read it. And I don't really care to read it. I really don't care what it says. Because like I said, I don't care about the story of a Castlevania game. I really don't. I mean, it's like the story of a Mario game. Most of the time you have the same villain, and most of the time the same stuff happens. You gotta go defeat the villain, and I mean, who cares? I don't care. I mean, I care with some of the later games because there's actually like a more developed story, but it's really not that interesting. But at least it's something. But here, it is literally the bare bones of a story. It has a hero, a villain, and that's about it. I mean, there's no plot elements, there's no, like, plot twists or anything like that. It's just, it's literally the minimal amount of story you could possibly have in a game, and there's some, I think these endings talk about some, like, backstory of the characters, like what they're going to do after this fight, but who cares? We never see these characters again, or we see Alucard later, but we don't see Sypha again. We don't see Grant again, or at least to my knowledge anyway. Or at least we don't see Grant and Sypha as playable characters ever again. We will see them again in another Castlevania game, but we won't be seeing them as playable characters. Or maybe I'm mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, but as far as I know, this is the only game where you can play as Grant, Sypha, and I think Trevor, too. I think this is the only game that Trevor is the hero. I'm trying to think right here, but As far as I know, this is the only game that Trevor is the hero of. I don't think there's any other ones, unless there's a game I haven't played or I just can't think of it right now, but we won't be seeing many of these characters again. We will be seeing Alucard again, and we'll be seeing him many times because Alucard is sort of a recurring character in the series from this point on. And he's even the main character in one game, what many people consider to be the best Castlevania game, but we won't be getting to that until I finish all the Game Boy games. I gotta do those first, then the Game Boy Advance games, and then I'll move on to almost everybody's favorite Castlevania game, including mine. But that won't be for a while. Here we get a typical Castlevania ending. We get a nice little montage of all the areas we've been to, and things like that, and it shows all of the people who made the game, you know, a typical credits sequence, and I think it's pretty cool. It's not stupid, but it's not fantastic either. But that is going to conclude the Castlevania 3 Dracula's Quest playthrough. Dracula's Quest, no, Dracula's Curse. I guess I still think I'm playing Castlevania 2 Simon's Quest. No, that will conclude the Castlevania 3 Dracula's Curse playthrough. I hope you enjoyed. This was the most work I've ever put into a playthrough. Like I said, I played through this game 6 times to get, you know, decent footage where I didn't die a lot. So I hope you enjoyed. And next up for the Castlevania series is Castlevania 4, or Super Castlevania 4, excuse me. I'm going to be playing the game again. I know I played it a long time ago. It was actually my second playthrough ever. But I want to do it again because that playthrough didn't go so well. And I just want to do it again. I think I can do it better. And then I'll eventually delete that old playthrough. But until next time, this is UAA signing out. I'll see you guys later.